I sat uncomfortably at my brother's engagement dinner, enduring the usual subtle jabs about my failed career. My brother Jackson introduced his fiancée Amanda to everyone with pride. When Amanda reached me, she froze, eyes widening in recognition. "Wait, you're Cassidy Walker? The founder of Horizon Tech?" The entire table fell silent. My mother's champagne glass slipped from her hand. My father stopped mid-sentence. Jackson's smug smile vanished. After years of being labeled the family disappointment, I realized my secret life was about to collide with my family's perception. Growing up in Brookline, just outside Boston, meant living in the shadow of my family's accomplishments. Our 3-story colonial home stood as a monument to Walker's success, with its mahogany bookshelves lined with medical journals authored by my father, Thomas, and law reviews featuring my mother, Diane. Their degrees and awards covered nearly every wall, a constant reminder of the standard I was expected to meet. From my earliest memories, family dinners were performance reviews rather than moments of connection. "Jackson earned another perfect score," my father would announce, beaming at my older brother while I pushed food around my plate, hoping no one would ask about my latest test results. "And Cassidy?" The inevitable question would come, usually from my mother, her eyebrows raised in anticipation that somehow, overnight, I had transformed into the son they wanted. "He's trying," my father would say with a sigh that conveyed both disappointment and resignation. "His teacher says he has trouble focusing." Again, what they never understood was that I did focus, just not on what they valued. While Jackson memorized anatomy charts for his future medical career, I took apart computers in my bedroom, rebuilding them with modifications that made them run faster. My mind worked differently, seeing connections and possibilities where others saw only established paths. The summer before my junior year of high school remains particularly vivid in my memory. My parents hosted their annual 4th of July barbecue, inviting colleagues, friends, and extended family to celebrate on our sprawling back lawn. I had spent months developing a primitive algorithm that could predict stock market trends based on social media sentiment. It wasn't perfect, but it showed promise. "What about you, Cassidy?" Uncle Frank asked as we gathered around the grill. "Jackson tells me he's already been accepted for early admission to Johns Hopkins. Following in your father's footsteps, eh?" He clapped my father on the back, who nodded proudly. "Actually, I started, excitement building. I've been working on this program that analyzes Twitter to predict market movements. It's already showing 70% accuracy for short-term trends." The silence that followed felt eternal, until my father laughed awkwardly. "Cassidy still needs to focus on getting his grades up if he wants to get into a decent college. Playing around with computer games isn't going to build a future." "It's not a game," I tried to explain, but my mother had already steered the conversation toward Jackson's summer internship at Massachusetts General Hospital. My graduation party 3 years later was the breaking point. Despite managing to get accepted to Northeastern University's computer science program, not Harvard Medical School like Jackson, but still an achievement I was proud of. My father used his toast to express hope rather than pride. "To Cassidy," he said, raising his glass while looking around the room of family, friends, and colleagues. "We're still hoping he'll find his way. Perhaps college will help him discover a more practical direction." 50 pairs of eyes turned to me with a mixture of pity and curiosity, as if I were a case study in potential unfulfilled. I excused myself early and decided that night to create distance between myself and family gatherings. I would forge my own path without their approval or understanding. The final straw came during my sophomore year of college. I had stopped by my father's office to drop off a birthday gift when I overheard him speaking to a colleague in the hallway. "Both kids?" "No, just the one following medicine. The other one," he paused, lowering his voice, "but not enough. He's the family disappointment. Smart enough, but lacks direction. You know how it is, every family has one." I left without giving him the gift. That night, I made a decision that would alter the course of my life. I would prove my worth, not to earn their approval, but to validate my own vision. Their dismissal became my fuel. If they couldn't see value in my path, I would build something so significant they couldn't possibly ignore it. But I would do it entirely on my terms, without their knowledge or interference. I dropped out of Northeastern the following week, cashed out my small savings account, and set out to create something that could change lives in ways even my father's surgical skills couldn't match. My new life began in a 300-square-foot studio apartment in Somerville with peeling paint and unreliable heat. The monthly rent consumed nearly all of my savings, leaving me with just enough for a used laptop and basic necessities. I lived on ramen noodles and peanut butter sandwiches, coding through the night when the building was quiet enough to concentrate. The initial months were brutal. I took freelance web development jobs during the day to keep the lights on while working on my true passion project during every spare moment. My vision was ambitious: an artificial intelligence system that could analyze medical imaging more accurately than human doctors, detecting patterns too subtle for the naked eye to catch. The idea had come to me after reading about a young girl who died because her cancer was diagnosed too late. The doctors had missed subtle indicators in her early scans that, in retrospect, were clear warning signs. I became obsessed with the thought that technology could have saved her life. 6 months into my self-imposed exile from family expectations, I met Gabriel Rodriguez at a tech meetup in Cambridge. 40-something with salt and pepper hair and the calm demeanor of someone who had seen both success and failure, Gabriel listened intently as I nervously pitched my concept after the official event had ended. "You're talking about disrupting the entire diagnostic industry," he said finally, nursing his coffee. "That's going to make you some powerful enemies." "I know," I admitted, "but it could save lives." Gabriel studied me for a long moment. "What's your name, kid?" "Cassidy Walker," I replied, then hesitated. The Walker name carried weight in Boston medical circles. My father had made sure of that. "But I go by CW, professionally." A slight smile crossed Gabriel's face. "Running from something or towards something, CW?" "Both, I guess." He handed me his card. "I've got some experience bringing medical tech to market. Call me if you want to talk strategy." Gabriel became more than a mentor. He became the first person to truly believe in my vision. With his guidance, I refined the concept into what would become Horizon Tech. He helped me secure a small workspace in an innovation hub and introduced me to his network of developers and medical professionals who were open to revolutionary ideas. Our first prototype was crude but promising. We trained the AI on thousands of anonymized medical images, teaching it to recognize patterns associated with 5 common cancers. The results were encouraging, but not groundbreaking until 3 a.m. on a Tuesday, when I discovered a fundamental flaw in our pattern recognition algorithm. For 72 hours straight, I redesigned the core system, barely stopping to eat or sleep. When I finally emerged, we had something extraordinary. An AI that could identify early-stage pancreatic cancer with 87% accuracy, far exceeding the current medical standard. Gabriel insisted we file patents immediately, and helped me navigate the complex regulatory landscape. We made a deliberate choice. I would remain in the background, using only my initials on all official documentation. This wasn't just about avoiding my family name. It was about proving that the technology could stand on its merit alone. The turning point came 18 months after that first meeting with Gabriel. During a pilot program at a small rural hospital in western Massachusetts, our system flagged an anomaly in the scan of an 8-year-old boy who had come in with stomach pain. The attending physician, initially skeptical of our technology, ordered additional tests based on our system's recommendation. They found a rare form of stomach cancer, at its earliest stage treatable, but only because it had been caught in time. That success opened doors. Investors began circling, intrigued by both our technology and our results. Gabriel handled most of the meetings, allowing me to remain the anonymous technical genius behind the platform. When my presence was required, I became C.W. Walker, wearing glasses I didn't need, and styling my hair differently than the shaggy look my family was used to seeing. 3 years of relentless work later, Horizon Tech had expanded to a team of 37 people, working from 3 floors of an office building near Kendall Square. Our technology was being tested in 27 hospitals across the country, with promising results accumulating daily. The financial press began speculating about the mysterious founder who rarely gave interviews and never appeared in photographs. Last month, we received an acquisition offer from MedTech Global, $380 million for our technology and team. The negotiations were in the final stages, with only my signature required to complete the deal. Through it all, my family remained unaware that their disappointment was on the verge of a success beyond anything they had achieved. The only people who knew my full identity were Gabriel and my core executive team. I had maintained the separation between Cassidy Walker, family disappointment, and C.W. Walker, tech visionary, with meticulous care, until Jackson's engagement dinner threatened to shatter the walls between my two lives. Amanda Burton, my brother's fiancée, worked for Wellington Capital, the investment firm that had led our latest funding round. She had never attended our in-person meetings. Her role focused on due diligence and financial projections, conducted remotely. But she had seen my photo in confidential documents and company presentations. Now, as she stood before me, in the private dining room of one of Boston's most exclusive restaurants, worlds were colliding in ways I had never anticipated. The evening had started predictably enough. I arrived 15 minutes late to the dinner at Sorellina, one of those upscale Italian restaurants in Back Bay where a pasta dish costs what I used to live on for a week. I chose to be late deliberately, hoping to minimize the time spent fielding questions about my career progress. The maître d' led me to a private dining room in the back. Through the glass doors I could see them already gathered. My father holding court at the head of the table, gesturing expansively as he told some story. My mother laughing politely with the couple to her right. Jackson with his arm around a woman I assumed was Amanda Blonde, elegant, wearing a navy blue dress that probably cost more than my first laptop. I took a deep breath, straightened my tie, the same one I'd worn to our last investor meeting, and entered with what I hoped was confident nonchalance. "Cassidy." "Finally," my mother said, rising to kiss my cheek. "We were beginning to think you'd forgotten." "Sorry, work ran late," I replied vaguely. My father raised an eyebrow. "What exactly is it you're doing these days? Still that website design thing?" Before I could answer, Jackson stood up, pulling Amanda with him. "Cassidy, meet Amanda Burton, my fiancée." "Amanda, this is my little brother Cassidy." Amanda extended her hand with a professional smile. "It's nice to finally meet you. Jackson has told me so much." She stopped mid-sentence, her eyes widening as recognition dawned. Her perfectly manicured hand froze in midair. "Wait," she said, voice dropping to a whisper that somehow carried throughout the now silent room. "You're Cassidy Walker? The founder of Horizon Tech?" Time seemed to stop. My mother's champagne glass slipped from her hand, spilling across the white tablecloth. My father, in the middle of explaining some medical procedure to Uncle Frank, fell silent with his hands still raised in demonstration. Jackson's smug smile vanished, replaced by confusion. For a moment, I considered denial. 3 years of careful separation between my two identities had become habit, but looking at their shocked faces, I felt something shift inside me. Maybe it was time for the truth. "Yes," I said simply. "I am." "There must be some mistake," my mother stuttered, dabbing at the spilled champagne with her napkin. I pulled out my phone, opened the Horizon Tech app, and displayed my founder profile. No mistake. I'm the C.W. Walker, who founded Horizon Tech 3 years ago. The silence that followed was broken by Uncle Frank's low whistle. "Isn't that the cancer detection software that was on 60 Minutes last month?" Amanda nodded, still staring at me. "Their AI platform has revolutionized early cancer detection. They're projected to save thousands of lives annually once fully deployed." She turned to Jackson. "You never told me your brother was that C.W. Walker." "Because he's not," Jackson said, his voice hard with disbelief. "This is some kind of joke." "It's not a joke, Jackson," I replied calmly. "Prove it," my father demanded, his surgeon's authority reasserting itself. "Anyone can make an app with their photo on it." Before I could respond, a waiter approached our table. "Mr. Walker? There's an urgent call for you at the front desk. A Mr. Rodriguez says it's regarding the MedTech acquisition." I excused myself and followed the waiter out, feeling their eyes on my back. Gabriel was on the line, his voice tense. "We've hit a snag with MedTech. Their legal team wants additional verification on the clinical trial data before signing. Can you come in tonight?" "I'm in the middle of something," I said, glancing back toward the private room. "Can it wait until morning? Their CEO is flying to Tokyo tomorrow. It's now or we delay by 2 weeks." I promised to be there within the hour and returned to the table, where an argument had erupted in my absence. "You're telling me," Jackson was saying to Amanda, "that my brother, who couldn't even finish college, is some tech genius who's built a multi-million-dollar company without any of us knowing about it?" Horizon Tech's valuation was $260 million in their last funding round, Amanda replied coolly. "And yes, that's exactly what I'm telling you. I've seen the documentation. I've worked on their financial projections. C.W. Walker founded Horizon Tech after developing a breakthrough AI algorithm for cancer detection." "This is preposterous," my father interjected. "Cassidy has always struggled with commitment and direction. This must be some misunderstanding." Jackson leaned forward, his expression hardening. "Or a lie. He's probably created some fake app to impress your friends at the investment firm." Amanda's professional composure cracked slightly. "I don't need to be impressed, Jackson. And I can assure you, Horizon Tech is very real. Their technology is currently being used in clinical trials at Johns Hopkins, your alma mater, in case you've forgotten." She turned to me. "Isn't your FDA approval announcement scheduled for next month?" All eyes shifted back to me as I returned to my seat. "Yes, though that information isn't public yet. I need to take care of something at the office," I continued, gathering my things. "There's an issue with the acquisition we're negotiating." "Acquisition?" My mother's voice had taken on a new tone, interest mingled with the first hints of pride I'd heard in years. "MedTech Global is acquiring Horizon. The deal closes next week." I stood to leave, then paused, looking directly at my family. "I'm sorry to cut the evening short. Congratulations on your engagement, Jackson and Amanda. Perhaps we can continue this conversation another time." As I turned to leave, I heard Jackson mutter to Amanda, "Stop fawning over the family reject. Even if this is somehow true, it doesn't change who he is." I pretended not to hear, but his words confirmed what I had always suspected. No achievement would ever be enough to change how they saw me. With that realization came an unexpected sense of freedom. I no longer needed their approval. I had built something valuable entirely on my own terms. The fallout from the dinner revelation was swift and complex. By the time I returned from my late-night meeting with MedTech's legal team, my phone had 17 missed calls and 23 text messages. Most were from my mother, whose tone evolved from disbelief to effusive pride over the course of 3 hours. Her most recent text read, "Darling, why didn't you tell us? Your entrepreneurial spirit clearly comes from my side of the family. My father built his law practice from nothing, you know. We should schedule an interview with Boston Magazine together." My father took a different approach. His single text message was terse and skeptical. "Need to talk. Require proof of your involvement with this company. Concerned about potential legal implications." Jackson hadn't contacted me directly, but Amanda sent a brief, professional message. "Apologies for the awkward situation tonight. I had no idea your family wasn't aware of your work. If you need any assistance with the MedTech deal, Wellington Capital has significant experience with medical technology acquisitions." I responded only to Amanda, thanking her for her offer and suggesting we meet for coffee the following week to discuss the acquisition further. Her insider knowledge of MedTech could prove valuable in finalizing our negotiations. 3 days later, I agreed to Sunday brunch at my parents' home, mentally preparing myself for the inevitable interrogation. I arrived to find my mother had invited nearly 20 people, family, friends, colleagues, and neighbors she wanted to impress with her newly successful son. "There he is," she exclaimed as I entered. pulling me into a hug that smelled of expensive perfume and mimosas. My brilliant entrepreneur. My father stood back, observing me with clinical detachment. He waited until my mother had paraded me around to each guest before pulling me into his study. "I've done some research," he said without preamble, closing the heavy oak door behind us. "Horizon Tech is indeed a significant player in medical AI. What I can't determine is your actual role there." "I founded the company," I replied simply. "I designed the core algorithm and built the initial prototype." "With what training?" "You dropped out during your sophomore year. Self-taught, plus thousands of hours of practice and research." He scoffed. "Medical diagnostics isn't something you pick up from YouTube tutorials, Cassidy." "No, but machine learning and pattern recognition are skills you can develop with enough dedication." I met his gaze steadily. "Our system outperforms human diagnosticians in early detection of 5 major cancers. The data speaks for itself." He leaned against his desk, arms crossed. "And you've kept this from your family for years? Because?" The question hung in the air between us. I could have mentioned the family disappointment comment, the dismissals, the constant comparison to Jackson. Instead, I opted for a simpler truth. I needed to prove it to myself first, without external pressures or expectations. Something flickered across his face, hurt, perhaps, or recognition. Before he could respond, Jackson burst into the study without knocking. "Well, if it isn't the secret tech genius," he said, voice slightly slurred from too many brunch cocktails. "Enjoying your moment in the spotlight?" "Jackson," my father warned, but my brother waved him off. "No, Dad. I want to know why Mr. Successful has been hiding his great accomplishments from us. Is it because there's more to the story than he's letting on?" I met my brother's gaze calmly. "What exactly are you suggesting?" "I'm suggesting," Jackson leaned in, lowering his voice, "that whatever you've built might not be as groundbreaking as everyone seems to think. Medical technology is my world, not yours." "Your world?" I couldn't help but laugh. "When was the last time you actually evaluated new medical technology rather than just using what the hospital purchases?" His face flushed. "I've reviewed your so-called breakthrough system. The clinical data seems suspiciously perfect." A cold realization washed over me. "You've accessed our trial data? How?" He straightened, suddenly looking more sober. "I have colleagues at Johns Hopkins. They shared some concerns about your methodology." "Those trials are double-blind and confidential," I said, anger rising. "Accessing that data without authorization is a serious ethical breach, possibly illegal." "Boys," my father interjected, "this is hardly the place." "No, Dad. I want to hear how Jackson justified violating medical ethics to investigate his own brother's company." I turned back to Jackson. "What were you hoping to find? Evidence that I'm a fraud?" Before he could answer, a knock at the study door interrupted us. Amanda entered, looking uncomfortable. "Sorry to interrupt," she said, "but people are starting to wonder where everyone went." Her eyes darted between Jackson and me, sensing the tension. "Amanda," Jackson said, his tone immediately softening. "I was just explaining to Cassidy that I've had some concerns about Horizon's clinical data." Her professional demeanor returned instantly. "What kind of concerns?" "The success rate seems statistically improbable for new technology." Amanda's eyebrows rose. "That's interesting, because Wellington's medical technology division had our own analysts review their methodology and results before investing. They found the data remarkably sound, with appropriate controls and transparency." "You've been specifically working on Horizon's account?" Jackson asked, a new edge in his voice. "I requested it." "Yes," she replied without hesitation. "Their approach to AI diagnostics aligns with my personal interest in preventative health care." She turned to me. "My mother died of breast cancer that was diagnosed too late. When I heard about Horizon's early detection system, I knew I wanted to be involved in bringing it to market." Jackson's expression darkened. "So you've been professionally involved with my brother's company without telling me." "I didn't know he was your brother until the dinner," she reminded him. "And client confidentiality prevents me from discussing my projects, as you well know." The conversation was interrupted by my phone buzzing with an urgent call from Gabriel. I excused myself to answer it in the hallway. "We have a problem," Gabriel said without greeting. "Someone's been attempting to access our clinical trial data through the Johns Hopkins system. They've also been contacting our early investors with concerns about methodology." My stomach dropped. When did this start? About 3 weeks ago. We traced the access attempts to an IP address at Boston Medical Center, where Jackson worked. I returned to the study to find the argument had escalated. Amanda was gathering her purse, her face tight with anger. "I can't believe you would do this, Jackson," she was saying. "Attempting to discredit your own brother's work. Out of what? Jealousy?" "It's not jealousy," he snapped back. "It's concern about medical ethics and proper scientific procedure. Is that why you've been trying to access our secure servers?" I asked from the doorway. "For the sake of medical ethics?" Jackson paled slightly. My father looked between us, confusion giving way to understanding. "Jackson, have you been interfering with your brother's business?" he asked slowly. The brunch ended abruptly after that, with guests sensing the family tension and making hasty exits. My mother tried desperately to maintain appearances, but her strained smile fooled no one. As I left, she pulled me aside. "Cassidy, darling, whatever is happening between you and Jackson, please don't let it affect the family image. We've always presented a united front." It was so perfectly characteristic of her concern that I couldn't even be angry. The family image was built on pretending I was a disappointment, Mom. I'm not interested in maintaining that fiction any longer. As I drove away, I realized the confrontation I'd avoided for years was now inevitable. Jackson had actively tried to undermine Horizon, potentially putting at risk not just the acquisition, but the technology that could save thousands of lives. Whatever lingering hope I had for reconciliation with my family was fading rapidly, replaced by a cold determination to protect what I had built. The full extent of Jackson's betrayal became clear over the next 48 hours as Gabriel and our security team completed their investigation. My brother hadn't just attempted to access our data, he had systematically contacted several of our early investors, raising concerns about our methodology and suggesting the technology wasn't as effective as claimed. More disturbingly, he had leaked certain aspects of our proprietary algorithm to a competitor, framed as seeking a second opinion from a colleague who happened to work for MedScan Technologies, our main rival in the diagnostic AI space. I arranged to meet Jackson at a quiet coffee shop in Cambridge, away from both our family and professional circles. He arrived 15 minutes late, looking haggard and defensive. "If this is about the other day," he began as he sat down. "It's about a lot more than that," I interrupted, sliding a folder across the table. "This is a record of your attempts to access our secure servers, your communications with our investors, and your correspondence with Dr. Alan Mercer at MedScan, where you shared aspects of our proprietary technology." Jackson glanced at the papers, then pushed them away. "You've been spying on me?" "No. You've been attacking my company, and we have standard security protocols that flagged the breach. The real question is why? Why would you try to sabotage something that's helping save lives?" His jaw tightened. "I was concerned about the validity of your claims. The success rates seemed too good to be true. That's not your determination to make. We have rigorous peer review processes in place. FDA oversight. Independent verification." I leaned forward. "But this isn't really about scientific validity, is it?" "What's that supposed to mean?" "You know exactly what it means. You've been the golden child your entire life. Dad's perfect protege. The one who followed the approved path. And suddenly, the family disappointment has built something significant without anyone's blessing or help." His expression flickered, and in that moment, I knew I was right. "You have no idea what it's like," he said, voice low. "Do you know what Dad said when I told him I was accepted to Johns Hopkins? Of course you were. Not congratulations, not pride, just expected success. Do you have any idea what that pressure feels like? To never be allowed to fail, as opposed to being labeled a failure regardless of what you do?" I countered. "At least they left you alone," he snapped. I've spent my entire life living up to the Walker name in medicine, following Dad's exact footsteps. And now, he stopped abruptly. And now what? I've succeeded in a field tangential to yours and suddenly you can't handle it? You don't understand. This isn't just about you. Your technology, if it works, as claimed, threatens to upend diagnostic medicine as we know it. Do you know what that means for specialists like me? I stared at him in disbelief. So this is about protecting your job security? You were willing to undermine technology that could save countless lives because you're worried about becoming obsolete? It's not that simple. It seems pretty straightforward from where I'm sitting. You betrayed me. You violated medical ethics. And you potentially delayed life-saving technology reaching patients, all because of your ego and insecurity. Jackson's phone rang, breaking the tension momentarily. He glanced at it, then rejected the call. "It's Amanda," he said unnecessarily. "She's barely speaking to me since Sunday." "I'm not surprised. You lied to her too." "I didn't lie. Omission is still deception, Jackson. She believed in Horizon's mission for deeply personal reasons, and you tried to discredit us without disclosing your conflict of interest." I gathered the papers back into the folder. "I need to know exactly what information you shared with MedScan." He ran a hand through his hair, suddenly looking exhausted. Nothing they couldn't have figured out eventually. Some observations about pattern recognition in early-stage pancreatic screenings. "We'll need that in writing, with specifics. Are you planning to sue me?" His voice held a note of disbelief. "I don't know yet. That depends on the damage assessment and whether you're willing to make this right." I stood to leave. "I've spent years building something meaningful, Jackson. Something that helps people. I won't let anyone threaten that, not even my brother." "Cassidy, wait." He grabbed my arm as I turned to go. "I was wrong, okay? I was jealous and scared, and I acted impulsively, but I never meant to cause real harm." I looked down at his hand until he released me. "Intent doesn't erase impact. Our legal team will be in touch about next steps." 3 days later, my parents requested a family dinner at their home. I agreed on the condition that Gabriel accompany me as Horizon's legal counsel. This wasn't a family matter anymore. It was business. We gathered in the formal dining room, the tension palpable. My mother had prepared an elaborate meal that no one was eating. My father sat at the head of the table, looking older than I remembered. Jackson and Amanda sat opposite Gabriel and me, with Amanda maintaining a professional distance from my brother. "This has gone far enough," my father began after an uncomfortable silence. "We're family. Whatever disputes exist can surely be resolved without legal action." "This isn't about family," I replied evenly. "It's about corporate espionage and attempted sabotage of a medical technology company. The fact that we share DNA doesn't change the legal implications." "Cassidy," my mother pleaded, "surely there's another way. Jackson has admitted he made a mistake." "A mistake?" Gabriel interjected. "Dr. Walker deliberately attempted to undermine Horizon's clinical trials and shared proprietary information with a competitor. Those aren't mistakes. They're calculated actions that could constitute several federal offenses." Jackson stared at his untouched plate. "I've already told Cassidy I was wrong. I've provided a full accounting of my actions. What more do you want?" "Accountability," I said simply. "You want to see your brother go to jail?" my father demanded. "Is that what this is about?" "Revenge. For years, of feeling second best." Before I could answer, Amanda spoke up. "With respect, Dr. Walker, this isn't about family dynamics. This is about professional ethics and potentially criminal behavior. If a physician at your hospital accessed confidential patient data and leaked it to an outside entity, what would the consequences be?" My father's expression tightened. "That's hardly the same thing." "It's exactly the same thing," she countered. "The fact that Jackson is your son doesn't exempt him from professional standards." "Where do you stand in all this?" my mother asked Amanda. "You're going to be part of this family soon." Amanda glanced at Jackson, then back to my mother. "I'm reevaluating that position, Mrs. Walker. I can't align myself with someone who would compromise their ethics so fundamentally, family or not. Jackson looked up sharply. You're breaking off our engagement because of this? Not just this, she said quietly. This situation has revealed aspects of your character I wasn't previously aware of. Your willingness to betray your own brother out of jealousy, your disregard for confidentiality and professional ethics. These aren't qualities I can overlook in a life partner. The room fell silent again. Finally, my father cleared his throat. What would it take to resolve this without legal proceedings? There must be some compromise available. Gabriel and I exchanged glances. We had discussed potential resolutions on the drive over. We have 3 non-negotiable conditions, I said. First, Jackson provides a complete, signed affidavit detailing every unauthorized access attempt, every communication with our investors, and every piece of information shared with competitors. Agreed, Jackson said immediately. Second, he issues formal retractions to anyone he contacted with, concerns about our technology, acknowledging that his actions were unauthorized and based on personal bias rather than scientific evaluation. My father started to object, but Jackson cut him off. I can do that. And third, I continued, he agrees to a legally binding non-interference agreement with significant financial penalties should he ever attempt to undermine Horizon Tech again. That seems excessive, my father protested. It's standard business practice, Gabriel replied. And given the circumstances, quite reasonable. As the legal details were being discussed, my phone lit up with a news alert. I glanced down, then froze. The notification read, Breaking. FDA grants early approval to Horizon Tech's revolutionary cancer detection algorithm. I hadn't expected the announcement until next week. Our PR team must have accelerated the timeline after learning of Jackson's interference. Within moments, everyone else's phones were buzzing with the same alert. My mother read the headline aloud. Game, Changing Medical AI receives FDA approval. Cassidy. It mentions you by name. Founder Cassidy Walker's breakthrough technology demonstrated unprecedented accuracy in detecting early-stage cancers. She looked up at me with newfound admiration. You're going to be famous. That's not why I built it, I said quietly. My father took off his glasses, rubbing the bridge of his nose. All this time, you were working on something truly significant, and we had no idea. You never asked, I replied simply. You decided who I was years ago, and never bothered to reconsider that assessment, even when evidence contradicted it. He nodded slowly, a gesture that contained more acknowledgement than any words could convey. As the implications of the FDA announcement sank in, the atmosphere in the room shifted. This wasn't just a family dispute anymore. It was a very public vindication of my work, my vision, and my path. For the first time in my adult life, I saw something approaching genuine respect in my father's eyes. But I realized, with surprising clarity, that I no longer needed it. The FDA announcement transformed a private family conflict into a public relations crisis. Within hours, my phone was ringing constantly with calls from journalists, industry analysts, and healthcare professionals. Gabriel had to bring in additional PR staff to handle the sudden media frenzy, while our legal team scrambled to address the potential impact of Jackson's actions on our pending acquisition. By evening, reporters had somehow connected the dots between Cassidy Walker, Horizon Tech founder, and the prominent Walker medical family of Boston. They began gathering outside my parents' home, hoping for comments about the medical dynasty's newest innovation. I was in the middle of an emergency conference call with our executive team when Gabriel received a text from MedTech's CEO. They're putting the acquisition on hold, he whispered, showing me the message. They want to investigate potential data integrity issues before proceeding. My stomach dropped. Jackson's whisper campaign had reached them. We need to get ahead of this, I told the team. Full transparency. Release the complete clinical data sets with independent verification. Schedule calls with key stakeholders to address any concerns directly. As we were developing our response strategy, another call came in from Amanda. Jackson is in trouble, she said without preamble. Boston Medical is launching an ethics investigation based on his accessing confidential patient data without authorization. They're citing potential HIPAA violations. What does that have to do with me? I asked, though I already knew where this was headed. Your parents are at our apartment now. They're asking for your help. They think you can make this go away. I laughed without humor. Make it go away? Jackson deliberately compromised patient privacy and medical ethics. Those are the consequences of his own actions. I know, she said quietly. I've made my position clear to them as well. But they're desperate. Your mother is crying, and your father. She paused. I've never seen him look afraid before. The realization that my family needed me, truly needed me, for the first time, was both satisfying and uncomfortable. Part of me wanted to enjoy their desperation, to let them experience a fraction of the inadequacy I'd felt growing up. But another part recognized that this wasn't who I wanted to be. Tell them I'll be there in 30 minutes, I said finally. But I can't promise anything. I arrived at Jackson's upscale Beacon Hill apartment to find a family in crisis. My mother sat on the leather sofa, eyes red from crying. My father paced by the windows, periodically checking the street below for reporters. Jackson sat apart from them, staring blankly at his phone. Cassidy, my mother said, rising to embrace me. Thank goodness you're here. I stepped back from her hug. I'm here to understand the situation fully, not to fix Jackson's problems. They're talking about revoking his medical license, my father said, his voice uncharacteristically uncertain. 25 years of practice, potentially ended over a momentary lapse in judgment. It wasn't momentary, I corrected. It was sustained, deliberate interference with a medical technology that could save lives, using his position to access confidential patient data in the process. I know what I did, Jackson said, looking up at last. I don't expect you to help me. I wouldn't, in your position. Then why am I here? Because I asked them to call you, Amanda said, entering from the kitchen with a tray of coffee cups. Because despite everything, this affects all of you, your family name, your professional reputations, and potentially Horizon's future. She was right, of course. A public scandal involving Jackson could impact Horizon at this critical juncture. The media would inevitably draw connections between us, raising questions about our technology's legitimacy precisely when we needed absolute confidence from partners and patients. What exactly happened? I asked, accepting a cup from Amanda. Jackson explained that Boston Medical had received an anonymous tip about his unauthorized access of patient data involved in Horizon's clinical trials. An internal audit confirmed the breach, triggering automatic ethics protocols. Did you access the actual patient files or just the anonymized data from our trials? I asked. Both, he admitted. I thought if I could find discrepancies between the raw data and what Horizon reported, I could prove there were problems with the technology. And did you find discrepancies? He shook his head slowly. No. If anything, the raw data showed even stronger results than your published findings. You were actually being conservative in your claims. The irony wasn't lost on me. So you violated medical ethics to disprove my work, only to inadvertently confirm its validity? It appears so, he said, a faint smile ghosting across his face before fading. Not that it matters now. My career is essentially over. My father stopped his pacing. There must be something we can do. Your company has influence now, Cassidy. Surely you can speak to someone, explain it was a misunderstanding. It wasn't a misunderstanding, I said firmly. And I won't lie to protect Jackson from consequences he earned. Then we're finished, my mother said dramatically. The Walker name in medicine, tarnished forever. I took a deep breath, considering our options. While I wouldn't compromise my ethics to save Jackson, there might be a path forward that served everyone's interests. The anonymous tip, I said slowly. It came after our coffee shop meeting, correct? Jackson nodded. 2 days after. And you've provided a complete accounting of your actions? Nothing else I should know about? Everything is in the affidavit I sent to your legal team. I turned to Gabriel, who had been quietly observing. If Jackson's observations about our pancreatic screening algorithm actually helped confirm our methodology. Could we potentially frame this as an informal peer review process that went outside proper channels? Gabriel considered this. Possibly. It would require careful messaging, but we could position it as overzealous scientific verification rather than corporate espionage. What are you suggesting? My father asked. I'm suggesting that instead of fighting each other, we align our narratives in a way that protects both Horizon and Jackson without lying about what happened. I turned to my brother. You would need to issue a public statement acknowledging that you accessed the data improperly out of scientific curiosity, express remorse for the breach of protocol, and confirm that your review actually validated our technology's effectiveness. You'd do that for me? After everything? Jackson asked skeptically. Not for you. For the thousands of patients who need our technology to reach hospitals without delay or controversy. The acquisition with MedTech is critical to scaling our deployment nationwide. My parents exchanged glances, clearly surprised by my pragmatic approach. Amanda spoke up. From Wellington's perspective, resolving this quickly and transparently would certainly help maintain investor confidence. As we discussed the details of our coordinated response, my father pulled me aside. I need to tell you something, he said quietly, leading me to Jackson's study. From his briefcase, he removed an old, worn leather journal. This was mine, from medical school. My first-year design for an automated diagnostic tool for bacterial infections. He opened the journal to reveal detailed sketches and notes, primitive by today's standards but remarkably forward-thinking for their time. I've never shown this to anyone, he continued. It failed spectacularly in preliminary testing. My professor called it an imaginative but impractical diversion from established medical practice. I abandoned it immediately and focused on traditional surgical techniques instead. I studied the yellowed pages with growing understanding. You had your own innovation dream, he nodded, which I lacked the courage to pursue. When you started showing interest in technology rather than medicine, it frightened me. I saw you potentially making the same choice I had faced between the safe, established path and the uncertain road of innovation. He closed the journal carefully. I pushed you toward what I knew, not because I thought you were incapable, but because I was afraid for you. Why are you telling me this now? Because I was wrong, he said simply. About you. About what constitutes meaningful contribution to medicine. Your technology will save more lives than my scalpel ever could. He placed a hand on my shoulder. I'm sorry. It took me so long to understand that. The gesture didn't erase years of dismissal and disappointment, but it offered a foundation for something new: mutual respect between different kinds of innovators. When we returned to the living room, the others had finished drafting a coordinated response plan. Gabriel's phone rang with news from our office. MedTech wanted to resume acquisition talks immediately, impressed by our transparent handling of the situation. As we finalized the details, a breaking news alert appeared on the television. Horizon Tech A detects cancer missed by traditional screening, saves child's life. The report featured a 7-year-old girl whose rare liver cancer had been detected by our system after 3 specialists had missed the early indicators. The timing couldn't have been more perfect, a living embodiment of why our work mattered more than family drama or professional rivalry. We watched in silence as the child's parents thanked the technology that had saved their daughter's life. In that moment, the path forward became clear to all of us. Whatever our personal conflicts, they paled in comparison to the impact our combined efforts could have on patients' lives. 6 months after the tumultuous engagement dinner that changed everything, I hosted a family gathering at my new home in Brookline. The sprawling Victorian wasn't ostentatious, but its warm woodwork and generous windows reflected both success and my personal aesthetic, a balance of innovation and tradition. The MedTech acquisition had closed 3 months earlier, bringing Horizon's technology to hospitals nationwide faster than we could have managed independently. I had stayed on as Chief Innovation Officer, focusing on next-generation applications while Gabriel handled the corporate integration. Jackson arrived first, noticeably changed from our previous encounters. After a month-long suspension and ethics review, he had retained his medical license, but shifted his focus from clinical practice to research. The experience had humbled him in ways I wouldn't have thought possible. "Nice place," he said, handing me a bottle of wine. Though I expected something more futuristic. "Robot butlers, maybe?" "Those are in the basement," I replied with a straight face, before both of us broke into unexpected laughter. The détente between us remained fragile but genuine. Weekly therapy sessions, both individual and together, had helped us begin untangling decades of competition and resentment. We would never be best friends, but we were finding a way to be brothers. My parents arrived next, my mother immediately touring the house and suggesting decorating improvements. My father quietly noting the framed patents on my office wall with newfound respect. "I've been reading about your next project," he said as we stood looking at the garden. "Neural interfaces for surgical guidance?" I nodded. "Early stages, but promising. The idea is to give surgeons like you enhanced visualization of structures beneath their immediate field of view. I'd be interested in consulting on that, if you're looking for clinical input." The offer caught me off guard, my father volunteering to play a supporting role in my project rather than trying to direct it. "I'd like that," I said simply. Amanda arrived last, now heading the healthcare technology division at Wellington Capital after a significant promotion. She and Jackson had officially ended their engagement 3 months ago, their relationship another casualty of his actions. But they had managed to maintain professional civility, recognizing that Boston's medical and financial communities were too intertwined for lingering animosity. Over dinner, the conversation flowed more naturally than any family gathering I could remember. My mother had abandoned her attempts to take credit for my success, instead asking thoughtful questions about the technology itself. My father discussed the ways Horizon's imaging analysis had already changed practices at his hospital. Even Jackson contributed positively, describing how the system had helped detect a subtle anomaly in one of his research subjects. After dessert, I brought out a surprise I'd been saving. My first failed prototype, preserved in all its clunky imperfection. "This is where it started," I explained. 3 years ago, in my studio apartment, running on a laptop that crashed every few hours. My father examined it with genuine curiosity. "May I?" he asked, before carefully opening the casing to study the components. "You know," he said after a moment, "this reminds me of something." He reached into his briefcase and withdrew the leather journal he had shown me months earlier. "I thought you might want to have this." As I paged through his old designs, I found myself wondering how different both our lives might have been if he had pursued his innovation, if he had been encouraged rather than redirected. "I've been thinking about what happened between us," my mother said, joining the conversation with uncharacteristic introspection. "I realize now that I helped create the dynamic between you boys. Always comparing, always holding up one as an example to the other." Jackson nodded. "It made me desperate to maintain position, to always be seen as the successful one, and it made me feel like nothing I did would ever be good enough," I added. "We should have celebrated your differences," she acknowledged. "Instead of trying to force you both into the same mold, I'm sorry for that." The simple apology, years overdue but finally offered, felt like the closing of one chapter and the opening of another. Not erasing the past, but creating space for a different future. Later that evening, after my family had departed, I sat in my home office, looking at a photo taken at dinner, all of us together, smiling not for the camera, but at something genuinely amusing. It wasn't perfect harmony, but it was real progress. My phone rang with a video call from Gabriel. "How did it go?" he asked when I answered. "Better than expected. My father wants to consult on the neural interface project." Gabriel raised his eyebrows. "Are you ready for that level of family involvement?" "I think so. On my terms, with clear boundaries." "Speaking of new projects," he continued, "remember that grant proposal for the STEM Education Initiative? The board approved it unanimously this afternoon. The foundation had been my personal priority since the acquisition. A program to identify and support neurodiverse students with aptitudes for technology and innovation. Students like I had been, who thought differently but lacked advocates to help them develop their potential. The following week, I visited the first cohort of scholarship recipients at MIT's Computer Science building. 20 students from varied backgrounds, each with unique cognitive approaches and brilliant ideas, gathered in the collaborative workspace we had funded. "I'm not here to tell you how to think," I began, looking at their eager, nervous faces. "You already know how to do that in ways most people can't understand. I'm here to tell you that those differences, the ones that might make you feel isolated or misunderstood, those are actually your greatest strengths." I shared my own story, not as a blueprint to follow, but as evidence that unconventional paths could lead to meaningful contributions. As they asked questions and shared their projects, I recognized in them the same determination, the same innovative spark that had driven me. One young woman approached me after the formal session ended. "My family thinks I'm wasting my time," she said quietly. "They wanted me to study business, something practical. They don't understand what I'm trying to build." I smiled, recognizing the familiar struggle. "Then build it anyway. Success looks different for everyone. The greatest achievement isn't meeting others' expectations. It's staying true to your unique vision when no one else can see it yet." As I drove home that evening, I reflected on the journey from family disappointment to finding success on my own terms. The validation had come, eventually, but the real triumph wasn't in proving my worth to others. It was in creating something meaningful that aligned with my values and abilities, regardless of external approval. The family wounds weren't completely healed, some scars would always remain. But we were learning to see each other more clearly, to value our differences rather than trying to erase them. And in that space of acceptance, genuine connection had finally become possible. Have you ever had to forge your own path when those closest to you couldn't understand your vision? I hope my story reminds you that sometimes the people who know you least are the ones who judge you most. If this resonated with you, please leave a comment sharing your experience. Don't forget to like and subscribe to hear more stories like this, and share with someone who might need encouragement to follow their unique vision despite others' expectations. Thank you for listening. And remember, success isn't proving others wrong, it's proving yourself right.